who terrorizes me regularly. It's awful, the stuff up with which I must put. We've got Maureen and Pat. Pat has moved from forest shrubs to Miami's farmland. I stopped to see Areli the other day for a moment, and so Pat was here. And if you two have never been treated to Pat or Maureen speaking, it's scary. They have the same New York accent, and they talk like this, and it's scary. And they finish each other's sentences. I mean, they're not sisters. They're weird. They're twins. I don't know what it is. It's like you're like living on somewhere in New York. And then we got Judy and Rick who live across the way. John and Chris are in Port Orange. Melissa is over near the golf course. Ed Johnson is, by the way, sharing a picture with us that'll be in this week of Cromwell. You never met Cromwell. Cromwell was an old English sheepdog.
Sir Cromwell.
And you'll see pictures of Cromwell, who was annoyed at the fact that it was hot, so he'd go out and sleep in the middle of the street. Stop. It was crazy, but it was a small town, so you could get away with that. Dennis is up in Port St. Lucie. Kim is and the Wisconsin-Illinois border, and I'm guessing it's minus 100.
No, it's 47.
All right. Nick is showing us his head like he's just been chopped off. All right, Nick, there he is. Nick Osterman's there. Good morning, Nick. And we've got Cecilia down the street and Joyce Anderson in South Miami. And we got Serge Cruz in Doral. Angie is in South Miami. Angie's daughter, she had pictures of her daughter the other day, Phoenix, who is growing up way too quick. Serge is with again, and Christopher Diaz is with us from North Miami. So on that note, let me see where we are. Today reading will be Angie and Melissa. Margarita's on tech, and I have some announcements. I did meet with Areli, and the thing we're kicking around, and we're kicking around, it's a good thing we're kicking around because there's been another outbreak of COVID in town. I don't know if you saw the news today, but Jackson South's staff, most of their staff members' families are now down with COVID. So Jackson South is overwhelmed. So I was thinking, and I talked to Margaret and some others about this, and we'll talk about this some more. In the fall, when it's cooler out, some people have missed face-to-face. So what I was thinking, and this is just kicking it around, is that Tuesdays and the second and fourth Sundays, of course, we'd have Zoom. But Areli said if we wanted to meet the third Sunday, we could meet at her house. So I thought we might try a third Sunday face-to-face. It would be the second Sunday's service all over again. So if you wanted to skip one, you could meet face-to-face at Areli's. The question is, if we try that, we have to be sure that everybody is vaccinated because Casey is in a wheelchair and paraplegic. So we have to be very, very careful. If we come face-to-face, everybody's vaccinated and we're still taking precautions. But that gives us a nice hybrid of being Zoom, which everybody really likes. But some people miss face-to-face, so you can do that too. So it gives us lots of options and choices. So I'd like you to think about that now, because with the outbreaks coming again and new strains of mutations coming with COVID, this is not over. So just share that with everybody to kind of think about that so we can do both. We don't have to do one or the other. Okay, Long Range Planning Committee. Sammy's on it, Joyce is on it, Nick's on it, Mary Grimmie's on it, Serge is ex officio. It'd be nice if we could have one more. The way this works is very, very simple. The UUA has lots of stuff of how you talk, questions you ask about where do you want to go in the future. And so the Long Range Planning Committee then would get material from the UUA, and they would have questions they'd ask us, like, what do you like? What do you want to continue? How do you see your future? What do you want to do about it? And the time to plan for the future is when things are healthy and good. Does that make sense to everybody? Well, it just makes sheer sense. You don't want to wait till you have a disaster, then you make bad decisions and it sticks with you. So I'm trying to get everybody to think ahead. We voted to do that at the annual meeting. And this now gives us a chance to take some time to look at some options and choices. And I'm hoping that makes sense to everybody, because it's a nice, healthy time for us. And that gives us a chance to kick things around, what we'd like to see and what have you. So if we could get one more, that would be terrific, just for what it's worth. But we've got 4, we're going to be getting together soon. I'll get a Zoom meeting together. And if anybody else wants to join, remember the object is to do some thinking. We'll have some help along the way and to get us some ideas of where we are and what we want to see. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Nice, relaxed atmosphere to do it. Number 3, next service is in May. Can you believe it's May already? It's May already. And I have no idea where the time went. I'm still back in January and the semester's over this week. So I have no idea what's going on. For any of you who are lost in time, I am too. Barbara Young, where were you yesterday? We missed you. Were you there yesterday? We missed you. We missed you. I want you to know everybody said that we missed you. And as a result of missing you, we sold your house.
I was here.
You were?
Yes.
We missed. I missed you. That's me
Well,
then.
I don't want to comment about that.
No, I missed you. It was me that did it.
Well, no, I was here.
Okay. That's typical of me. All right. The summertime. We're going to have 3 themes that we tried a couple of summers ago that everybody liked. We're going to talk about restoring, refreshing, and renewing. So times to look at things, how to refresh, restore, renew. So summer is not really a break. Unlike a lot of congregations, we don't lose people in the summer. We'll have a couple will go up north, but by and large, everybody still lives here. And with Zoom, we found out that with a lot of out-of-towners and stuff, that we don't suffer the big drought that a lot of congregations do in the South. So we're very, very, very fortunate. So we'll continue full steam ahead in the summer, just as if we're here in the winter. Full service, full everything. For those of you who are interested in this class, we're finishing up Paul and Thomas, and then we're going to start Hinduism. So for those of you interested in world religions, I'll let you know so you can know what's going on as we continue on Saturday mornings. We're finishing up Paul next time and looking at Thomas, and then off into Hinduism. And finally, let me remind everybody pictures. We've got some cartoons this time, got some other pictures, including one Ed Johnson is sending us from 1970, Cromwell. That's another interesting animal that we've got. And let me remind you, but if you didn't see it, go to this Thursday's weekly and check out Kim's cat, his 4-year-old male Maine Coon cat. You ought to see this thing. It is magnificent, absolutely magnificent. And so we welcome Chris K. Schweitzer, also from Port Orange. And with that, we will have the lighting of the memorial candle and then go into an introit. Today, I want us to think ahead of what's happened and what's continuing to happen. We are having an absolute decimation of population in India. The COVID is literally out of control. If you've been paying attention to the news, it is out of control, followed by Brazil. And in our own backyard, a big, big sad thing has happened. The staff family members at Jackson South, which has been vaccinating hundreds and hundreds of people, the staff family members have now gotten somehow, a whole bunch are now infected with COVID. So let us remember our friends who have been infected, those who haven't been vaccinated, and remember to keep safe just as well. We still have to keep safe. Our introit, a favorite from Yesu, Azali from Selah. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. And for prayer, if we would continue by Wendell Berry. In peace, I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting for their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free. And Angie's going to read to us a reading from Kitty O'Meara, if you would, Angie.
And the people stayed home and read books and listened and rested and exercised and made art and played games and learned new ways of being and were still and listened more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced, some met their shadows, and the people began to think differently.
No.
I don't know if you missed that. There was a cow that mooed in the very beginning. And I don't know, did you notice the bass? It has no bottom. It's an electronic bass. And that's the first time I actually ever heard bass sound that good. I mean, it was, you could hear the bass, and the guy playing was really into it. Did you see that? He was really enjoying that. And I'm thinking, wow. And a cow. All right, moving right along. Angie is going to continue with us with the Kitty O'Meara reading, but this time we put it into a responsive reading, and Angie's going to lead us.
And the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed and the people joined together again, they grieved their losses and made new choices and dreamed new images and created new ways to live and heal the earth fully as they had been healed.
And Melissa's going to read a time from a couple of thousand years ago when they too had a pandemic, from Psalm 6, if you would, Melissa.
Be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am languishing. Heal me, O Lord, for my bones are troubled. My soul also is greatly troubled. But you, O Lord, how long? Turn, O Lord, deliver my life. Save me for the sake of your steadfast love. For in death there is no remembrance of you. In Sheol, who will give you praise? I am weary with my moaning. Every night I flood my bed with tears. I drench my couch with my weeping. My eye wastes away because of grief. It grows weak because of all my foes.
But the Mississippi Mass Choir has a response to that. That is the Mississippi Mass Choir. And you know what it's like to be Black and living in Mississippi. In spite of all that, raise up with all that energy and said, I'm not tired yet. Wow. Grant us, we ask, to speak, to hear, and to learn, so that our fears may be banished, our minds may become enlightened, our faith be increased, our steps directed towards you. Amen. I am painfully aware of limitations that I bring to a discussion this morning. I am painfully aware that many of us have been lucky from luck and fate. I am aware that Ecclesiastes said, time and chance happen to you all. And when I think about what's happened since last February and the beginning of March, a lot of us have been overwhelmed. I'm painfully aware of minorities that have suffered way, way, way beyond endurance in death and disease in this country. I am painfully aware of what's happening in India today, in Brazil. I'm painfully aware of all the strife on the planet. And I'm also painfully aware that even in Miami, I really don't represent much of Miami. For some strange reason that nobody is really sure of, including herself, Maria bought this house when it wasn't even built. And out here, it was strawberry fields. Walmart was a wall. Kmart wasn't even built yet. I mean, Target wasn't even built yet. And it was desolate. Kendall Drive was the road to nowhere, if anybody remembers that. And, you know, out here, it's like a bubble. You live where I'm living and there's trees, there are lakes. And on this side of Kendall Drive, you're not aware that you go across Kendall Drive 2 miles from here, and there must be 100 apartment buildings that you can't see because they're shielded from trees on Kendall Drive, where thousands of people are packed in. So we found ourselves, Maria found herself, because she just saw a nice home that she could afford for she and her 2 kids. And here we are. When I married her, I had no idea really much about what the place was. And so by luck, I wind up here. But I look around Miami and there are vast sections of Miami where people are jammed in together. There is great distrust of government for very good reasons. Let me remind everybody, the government told the African-American community, which was thriving in Overtown, thriving and big, their community would remain intact when I-95 was brought in. And do you remember what happened? I-95 ruined that huge Black community. And it was like afterwards, oh, a big oops, sorry, we didn't really plan that to happen like that. So there's not much trust. And I read about Miami in the 90s during the Miami Vice era and what happened to the Black community and crooked cops and things like that. Nothing has changed. So people wouldn't get vaccinated. They didn't trust the government. So I'm living in a town that's over jammed with people in lots of places. I happen to be in a spot that's not by pure luck. So I realize when I make comments, I'm really ought to keep my mouth shut in the sense I can't really speak for a lot of people. But on the other hand, there's some things that I wanted to share that I've read about what others have said. And I also want to share that I'm not as bright as I think I am. I thought I was handling this just fine until I got my first COVID shot. And it took me a good half hour to realize that I had been carrying in more fear than I ever realized. I got the shot, and I can't tell you what it was like to have something leave me. I had no idea. Yeah, he who thinks I understand himself well, wrong. I was loaded with fear and trepidation and had no idea how much it was. After when I got the first shot, it took me a half hour to realize I was holding that much in. And here I was in a fairly nice area where people are jammed together. And I discovered shopping at 7 a.m. at Publix when 5 or 6 people would show up, which was incredibly safe. But I share some things I've read about what people are saying in this last year. It's been a very, very strange year. And I think everybody here has been touched in one way or another by what's happened with COVID and the resulting residuals from around it. Reading from an article called Who We Are Now, everyone knows someone who got sick or died or lost a job. Several of my students' grandparents have died. My wife's niece, husband's father died. Lots of my students got COVID. Our daughter got COVID, granddaughters got COVID. Lots of other people got COVID. Through it all, this sentence really was kind of annoying. Through it all, the world hasn't stopped. Did you notice that? With all the disease and all the world keeps going. For some, facing trauma feels too hard. Others have found unexpected resilience. Isn't that strange when disaster happens? Some are overwhelmed. Some are shocked at resilience they never knew they had. Does that make sense to anybody? Sometimes we don't know ourselves as much as we think we do, and sometimes we have resilience we never thought about. The questions of how we have changed will be with us for months and years ahead, they write. Where it takes us remains to be seen. I have some quotes from people reflecting on the last year. Maybe I was naive, but I always assumed in a crisis, we come together as a society and have each other's back. I thought so too. Never did I expect that our government would let us down. Does anybody remember it was every state for themselves? There was no coordination. And do you remember states that's governors and people said they liked the former president got supplies quicker than those who didn't? Who ever thought you would actually see that happen in a country like this? Who thought that you would see the former president get up and say, well, come springtime, it will all disappear. It's magic. It's magical. It'll all disappear. And that's when the COVID really went through the roof. Whoever thought you'd see a former president say, take some bleach. That can help you and give you all other kinds of medicine that the CDC said, don't you dare even think of that. I mean, when we look back at this and we were supposed to see press conferences helping us navigate this, we instead got lists of daily grievances and resentments of everything that's wrong with this country because it's not like the white 1950s. This person writes, I do not trust people or institutions in the same way, and I don't think I will ever again. I will not forget how our societies treated vulnerable people and essential workers as expendable, minorities as scapegoats, facts and public health as suggestions or lies. Let me read that again. That is so true and it's shocking and it's sad. I will not forget how our societies treated vulnerable people and essential workers as expendable, minorities as scapegoats, facts and public health as suggestions or lies. I think you just saw the report about the two people in the CDC who were appointed, not doctors or anything else. They got in the way of the CDC telling us the truth about how many people were infected, and they actually hushed it up. These two people's names have now been published, and what they did in terms for the American public are now known for everybody. But of course, since they were political appointees and resigned very quickly, there is nothing that can be done. The damage is already done. Writes another person, I applied to over 400 jobs in 2020 alone. Listen, I applied to over 400 jobs. It feels like there's no way to catch up, let alone get ahead. Then she writes, I focus on enjoying little things because those things are things I can control. So if you like watching a TV movie, you like baking, you like doing some planting, you like walking the dog, enjoy it. Because it's something you can actually do that's not going to infect you or get mad at you. The little things. Somebody else writes, I don't think I can go back to a before. I don't think I fit into that life anymore. I'm thinking about this and I'm jumping ahead of myself. Have you guys ever read about people who actually work in New York City? Some people live an hour and a half to 2 hours away because they can afford housing. So you get people near Easton, Pennsylvania, who can afford a half acre of ground in a 2-story house, and it takes them 2 hours going from bus to train to subway into New York, and then going back 2 hours. That's 4 hours commuting, subway, train and bus. Can you believe that? And people are saying, I'm not doing that again because I find out I don't have to. I mean, things have changed. Somebody said, I feel guilty for being so unfazed by death. Sometimes when you see disasters around you, you just literally numb. Have you ever felt that way? You just numb. It's not that you're mean or uncaring or unloving, you just numb. You read about survivors from Auschwitz or survivors from death camp or people who've been shot down in war and they're prisoners of war. They'll tell you the only way to survive is to develop a shell where you're numb. Your sensory perceptions are just overloaded. And if you don't numb up, you'll end your life because it's just too overwhelming. Here's somebody wrote, I thought this was lovely. I finally started looking at myself. I thought that was a really honest thing to say. Somebody else wrote, I no longer have any clear trajectory, and I'm learning to make peace with that. Interesting thought. Somebody else wrote, for many, that doesn't change the reality that the past year has been a trauma, one that was still unfolding. She was writing about now how many people are vaccinated. She said, yes, we may be slowly going back to work, whatever that may mean, but for that does not change the trauma for many people. Now, the experts, those were lay people. The experts now are opining, and they said to us, disruption will accelerate. I think that's strange. This country has always been disruptive. I don't know what kind of American history you ever took, but did you ever really read unvarnished American history? We've always been a pain. Seriously, have you ever read? Anybody want to go back to the Puritan era? Are you ready for that? Do you want me to get up in a wig, white bands, and start screaming about the pit is ready? Brimstone, you can smell the brimstone. Anybody ready for that? Anybody ready to go out? Oh, here we go. Let's go out to the country. Yes, we'll go out to the country and be free at last, and there's no neighbors nearby. And that means when John Sloan breaks his leg and we have nobody come rescue him, and what are we going to do? And there's no doctor for 20 miles. And guess what? The outhouse is blown up because of methane gas, and John's leg is still messed up, and the horse is sick, and he dies because he's out there free at last. Yes, isn't that just wonderful? Yes, isn't that wonderful in the wintertime? You can't see anybody. Are you ready for this? Because it's frozen in. You have to have chamber pots that freeze at night. You're stuck in the same smelly house because nobody washes, and you're smoking from the fireplace. Isn't that just wonderful? We want to be free, and we want to go back to the way it was. Really? Really, really, really? You washed once a month if you were lucky. Take a look at your teeth, folks. Let me see those teeth. Yes, you have teeth. How many people do you think had teeth after they were 25? John will tell you he's a dentist. You don't want to know. And what do you think they use for toothbrushes? Answer is, what toothbrushes? And deodorant? Deodorant's new. I don't know if you knew that, anybody. You dealt with nature the best you could. Sometimes some mud, sometimes some leaves. We've always had disruption. We had the know-nothings in the 1840s. We had Ku Klux Klans. We had stealing and raping and pillaging and killing of Native Americans. Oh, yes, that pesky, pesky thing about the people that were here first. Oh, we don't like to mention that. That gets annoying, Kenneth. And now Texas wants to call slaves workers. Workers, foreign workers. Did you hear that? That's when one of the textbooks wanted to no longer call slaves from Africa. They wanted to call them foreign workers. That, by the way, is just a couple of years ago. Talk about disruptive. Politics will become more turbulent. Have you ever read about the history of the House of Representatives in the United States? Did you know fist fights were common in the House of Representatives in the mid-1800s? There was a catalog of fist fights, people throwing, listen to this, spittoons at each other, and people taking canes and beating each other over the head. The New York Times had a list of all the years in which people fought each other through spittoons. Can you imagine that? Getting so mad you waft a spittoon. Pat doesn't even know what a spittoon is. Pat, there was a time when men and women chewed tobacco. That's good for your teeth too, and your gums and everything else. And you had to spit it someplace. You had a spittoon. So you get mad and you're too weak. So you waft a spittoon across the House of Representatives. Disruptive. I love experts. It's always been disruptive. Pandemics will persist. You know, we in the United States have an incredible short memory span. You know that. That's nothing new. You talk to people about the Spanish flu, the great influenza epidemic, and you would think that happened 500 years ago. Am I right? Will you listen to people talk? It was a mere 110 years ago? No, not even that. 1917, 2000. No, it was 100 years ago. Now, let me ask you a question. Is 100 years a long time in human history? Honestly, people thought that once that was over, we're done, folks. We're good to go. And I'm thinking, didn't you and I read in medieval times, the plague came back in the 1300s, the late 1300s, the 1400s, the mid 1400s, the 1500s, didn't we keep on reading that? And somehow we think, oh, it's all gone. We still haven't found the vector for Ebola. Swine flu appears. I got the swine flu. Oh, I have to tell you this. You'll love this. I don't know if I shared this with you before. Great moments in medical history. I'm in the hospital and the doctor comes up to me and he says to me, we finally figured out what you have. He said, you've got swine flu. Then he looks at me very honestly and he says to me, you know, you can die from that. And then I won't tell you what I said because I can't use language like that over the Zoom, suggesting that really isn't a good way to deal with somebody who has a heart transplant at my age, telling me I'm going to die because I shared some moments of what they ought really to say. Anyway, moving along. Pandemics persist. And this isn't going away, as you saw, and this is going to be with us for a while. And I'm sorry it's uncomfortable, but that's the way it is. And it's been uncomfortable with pandemics since humankind has been recording. I think some of you read, Maureen talked about the author of this yesterday, Germs, Guns, and Steel. Pandemics have been with us since humankind was recording humankind's history. They didn't know what they were, but they killed people all the time, these diseases. But our experts did point out something: crises can create opportunities. Take a look at this screen today. If it hadn't been for this crisis, we would have never been on Zoom. And who do we have on Zoom? We've had Maureen on Zoom regularly. Pat on Zoom, Ed Johnson on Zoom, Kim on Zoom, on Zoom. We've had Dennis. We've had John and Christine. We've had Gail and Tom, Kay, and we've had a whole bunch of people outside of Miami that are with us all the time now, all the time. And that's because of Zoom. Our parish is no longer Miami. It literally covers the United States, and it covers also Germany and England, because we've got somebody who fills in with us on Saturday from London, and my cousin from Munich fills in with us too on Saturday as well. So we have people all over, and so Zoom does create opportunities. Education, guess what? You're going to love this. Our Ivy League schools have now, because they couldn't rely upon their usual ways of applying, have now admitted for the first time more minority students than they ever have in their history, because the usual ways didn't work. They got wiped out. So now they had to use some old-fashioned metrics, and guess what? A whole bunch of people that they would have never gotten in the front door are now getting opportunities. We are now offering, I love this word, modalities. We're offering 4 modalities of education at Miami-Dade College this fall. Lots of modalities to meet lots of people's interests and abilities. Medicine has changed, and we're learning about medicine doesn't work so well with pandemics, and we've got to create a lot of new ways of working at things. It was a wake-up call. And it's a wake-up call that we don't treat minorities and poor people and old people like crap. It's a wake-up call that business may be business, but lives still count. And I hope the governor gets paid for that. We can work from home. Who knew? You don't have to go 2 hours each way to New York to get a job, and then 2 hours back, you can do it from home. You are now having options of being able to work from home. Commuters are saved time. Real estate is changing. And a lot of people have discovered the joys of dogs. Okay, cats. I had to put down cats. During the pandemic, people realized they were alone. And who is the best person to be with when you are alone? Now, I've got to watch my mouth. I remember one time, Maria and I were having this discussion. And I'll tell you, this is the show. I have to watch myself. And I was being annoying. I know that's regular. I was being annoying and I said, looky here. I said, the only thing that's been constant in my life are dogs. Wives come and go, women come and go, and I should have shut up. But no, I had to go on and on and on. I said, but a good dog and a hound remains forever. Maria didn't say a word, but she gave me the look. I might point out Maria's still here. The dogs have come and gone, but Maria is still here, and she's giving me the look now. Some people have discovered dogs, and of course, cats. And you find that, you know, being alone isn't so hot. You miss somebody who's something, and people have had to rediscover themselves and what they need. And some of you have discovered a reawakening of what do you really think about the world? Okay, at this point, Serge Cruz uses the word reverend. Every so often he calls me reverend, which scares me. I don't think any of you, I think, would be surprised at this. I have gotten in trouble, I think, really over the years is because I don't see myself as a reverend. There are some clergy who have a distinct aura about them as being reverend or doctor. There are some clergy who you just kind of sense this thing that they are whatever. I have never considered myself different. Although I'm reminded regularly, once you are ordained, whether you like it or not, you are put in a different category. What I'm saying is, I have some ideas about this, but this is not Puritan where the minister gets in the pulpit and starts saying, this is it. This is not like a Baptist preacher saying, you need to listen to me. I'm a conduit for God. This is simply another one of you sharing some ideas to see if they're helpful at all. I think, number one, we have times like this, you and I are given the famous false choice. The false choice is there is either a God who is in charge or there's nothing but time, death, and fate. The God who's in charge, I have never really bought the language for, because this God is supposed to be all creating and all powerful and all knowing. Now, if you're all knowing, that means you know what you're going to create. Well, if you're all knowing, why would you create this mess that's this planet to begin with? Or why would you create human beings you're going to screw up and then get mad about it when you created them, according to this logic? And if you're all powerful, why not fix it, for heaven's sake? So I never bought the God is in charge, because the language just didn't add up, and certainly the behaviors. I mean, that thing, God sends an angel of death into Egypt to kill the firstborn. And I asked my classes, would your God send an angel of death into a land that never heard of this God and kill everybody that was firstborn? I mean, seriously, when you think about things like that. On the other hand, is there just time, death, and fate? I would like to argue, just as my own opinion, Siddhartha said there was a middle way. Aristotle called the golden mean. It's not either or. Some thoughts. I think Hindu Vedic thought had something to offer when they said the divine is all around us. And I think one of the biggest problems that you and I have, and humankind has, we're so busy and so even agenda, even hunter-gatherers have the agenda of what? They've got to eat. And so they're concentrated on what? Hunting and gathering. We are so caught up in, we don't see stuff around us. That old joke, oh, stop and smell the roses. Well, it's not a joke, it's smart. How many people actually see things around us that are given to us to help us get through the rough times? We've got plants, we've got dogs, we've got music, we've got things to read, we've got all this stuff that's given to us. Art. Right down here, we've got art, words, plants, music, dogs, cats. We've got things all around us. And we're so blocked, I don't think we even see it. So how do you get through a pandemic? You see the divine around you. You grasp it and sense it. Number two, I've done inner work. I'm wondering who our role models are. Do we have role models of how they got through the tough times? Words. I'm looking at 3 sets of words that just work for me. Mary Oliver, who I've just gotten to know as a poet. This is embarrassing. I know all of you have known Mary Oliver for decades. I'm just learning Mary Oliver. She has this thing. It is a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in a broken world. I like that because our world sometimes seems very broken. It's a serious thing to be alive. And to remind ourselves, if it's going to be serious, to take the things around us that are made to help us. I'm taking this totally out of context to make no apology. Knowing that suffering produces endurance, endurance produces character, character produces hope, and hope does not disappoint us. That, oddly enough, is from Paul, who's the last person I would ever turn to for some hope. But taking his words out of context, I thought that is true. Suffering does produce endurance. Endurance produces character, and you know it does. And character produces hope, and hope doesn't disappoint us. And hope in what? Another passage from Paul, which I found strange that he would write, hope and love. You've got love all around you. Remember the movie Love Actually? It's all around you. You've got nature around you. You've got friends, companions, dogs, everything around you is full of love. Love is patient and kind. Love is not envious or boastful. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrong, but rejoices in the right. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends, and it's all around us. There for us, free. And I would argue that's part of divine reality. So we have divine reality around us. We have inner work that can keep us strong when times are awful. Friends. Here is a good time to look at who your friends are. Do you have some good friends? A suggestion. If you don't have some good friends, it's never too late to make some good friends. A suggestion. If your friends are no good and not helpful, get rid of them. Bad friends are a drain. Seriously, you need some different friends. You need some different friends. You don't have to have many, but a good friend is hard to come by. My closest friend, and this, if you would have told me this years ago, I couldn't say this, but I can say it now. My closest friend is named Maria Teresa Estrada. Has been my closest friend now for a very long time. I've got some other close friends too. And I consider myself extraordinarily blessed to have people that accept me for the mess that I am. And I think it's a wonderful thing when we have friends that like us just for who we are. No agenda, no trying to meet something that we aren't, no trying to put us in a box. Just say, yes, you're fine the way you are, and that's all that counts. Is that a wonderful, freeing thing? Divine reality is your friends who accept you and give you a hug just for who you are. And finally, I think to get through all of this, you need a community. That's my own point of view. I don't hope you don't take All Souls for granted. I certainly don't. But it is certainly a nice place in a day and age when you can have a motley crew like us that has a variety of thoughts and opinions and theologies and ethnic backgrounds and different thoughts that we gather in spite of it all and support each other. Do you realize how special it is if we were to think about the different ideas we bring to the table? I know all of you. You have different ideas, different thoughts, different ways of processing stuff. You come from different families, different backgrounds, all over the place. And yet, through all of this, every 2 Sundays a month, and sometimes on Saturdays, we gather to give each other support and help and hope. No judgment calls about any of us. No trying to put somebody in a box. No trying to make somebody something they're not. Not trying to hold up some artificial standard that's not real, just accepting and encouraging you as you go along your path. And if we have a joint path together, that's mutually supportive. Gosh, isn't that incredible today in this day and age? And notice there's no authority, no power, no control, and no asking for money. I need a jet. I need $1,500 sneakers. I need designer jeans so I can strut around the stage as I'm preaching in this band, in this light show that's really more about entertainment than how do we cope during rough times. So how I've tried to get this together during a pandemic is the divine around us. Do we have inner work? I sought words. I looked at role models. I like Jesus as a role model. And the reason I like Jesus is very simple. He was poor. He worked for the poor and asked for no money. No power, no authority, no control. He was what he was, and I like that. You notice he worked with the sick all the time. He would go near people nobody would go near and didn't care. I mean, can you imagine going up to a bunch of lepers 2,000 years ago and laying his hand on one of them and talking with him? I mean, that to me is amazing. There are other role models, lots of role models, whatever works for you. And then there are those pesky religious experiences where something hits you. It is so cool. It transforms you. It makes you smell. And you're like my friend John Fraser says, I'm an atheist, but I have these religious experiences regularly. That's the way it is, folks. It's just the way it is. And you grasp friends and ditch bad ones. And you enjoy a community. And that's the way I'm getting through, which means I have to thank you for letting me be here another day, because you are the community that helps support me. And I hope I'm part of the community that helps support you. And just some thoughts about how you and I slug it out, trying to appreciate around us and through us and by us together, affirming, loving, caring, crying, hugging, and trying to be good. And that we offer blessings and thanks. Amen. A marvelous song by the Three Tenors. John Shelby Spong was for several decades the Episcopal Bishop of the Diocese of Newark. He really sounds like he was a product of All Souls Miami. His diocese loved him. He drove traditionalists absolutely nuts. And he wrote the following quote, which I thought would be for us a great way to introduce the meal. The task of religion is not to turn us into proper believers. It is to deepen the personal within us, to embrace the power of life, to expand our consciousness in order that we might see things that eyes do not normally see. So we have bread and cup, very simple bread, unleavened bread, a matzah, if you will, a simple cup of diluted wine, and we see nothing but simple bread and simple cup. But in Jesus' time and before his time, it was a powerful symbol in its simplicity. You welcome everyone, including the stranger, with the most common and gracious of elements, bread for all and a cup for all. And so even though we have a pandemic, and even though we are far away electronically, we still symbolically offer a bread and cup to all in fellowship, in warmth and kindness to stranger and friend alike. And then we follow that with a saying that I asked you to repeat after me. Promise me you'll remember. You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. God didn't promise days without pain, laughter without sorrows, sun without rain. But the divine did promise strength for the day, comfort for the tears, and light for the way. Amen. We have now the black chip. Does anybody have a black chip to return? Anybody have anything they've been working on that they needed to work on that they need to return? All right, if something is bothering you, really, really annoying you, and this means this happens to all of us several times during the year, does anybody need to pick up a black chip? Now, if you don't have one of these, let me know and we'll mail you a bushel full. Cecilia said, I don't have any black chips. So I went down to Cecilia's and she said, how many of these are that you're giving me? I said, just in case you lose a few. If you need black chips, we will gladly send you some. If anybody has something they need to work on, anybody need to hold up a black chip? We're all good then today? Ah, you're picking up 3?
No, I'm just holding on to my 3.
Oh, okay. Well, you pick up 3. That's fine. Your sister's there. That might be good for 3. All right. Parting prayer, and then we have another hymn, if you will. May the blessings of God be upon us in this hour and the days to come, that we may seek the truth more devotedly, we may think more independently, we may forgive more quickly, we may pray more thoughtfully, and may we seek and enjoy the divine around us more courageously. Amen. If you want to talk about divine reality, I was looking for a song and I saw that on YouTube and wondering, where have I been? Those wonderful voices and those wonderful kids, did you think? Singing together like that from all those different backgrounds, just opening their hearts. Now may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, and may the rains fall softly upon your fields. And when we meet again, may the divine in me greet and embrace the divine in you. Amen. And before we go, let's say hello to everybody before we take off to our various